And in my head, I'm just thinking about, okay, but what is then success? Like, he kind of defined in one of his presentations about, reaching your own goals. And I'm like, well, but you read a lot of books about success, and who write those books? Well, people who are famous. Like, you're not gonna write a book about success unless you're not famous. Maybe you're a researcher, but then you're probably researching people who accomplish very high in society, like an Olympic medal or list or something. And those are famous people. Like, so it's like you come down to fame very quickly, or else you like somebody who has a house, a wife, a dog, kids, has a job he loves, is very happy, is healthy, maybe lives to.
Yeah, as a happiness researcher, I would say I would not start there because I'm afraid they are not the most happy people around.
You mean the Olympic medalists, or?
I think actually the ordinary people which have their jobs and their family and who are enjoying that and in their house
Yeah,
and who are content with the life they're leading,
those are the most happy people.
I think they're the most stable and happy people. Yes.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think so, and that's a shift in my own mindset over the last year, where I didn't felt that for a long time, and even almost questioned my own dad to a certain degree of like, okay, he worked for like the same job for more over than 30 years, and he's happy with that, he's content with that, but he could have been so much more, right? And then I realized it's like, well, maybe he didn't want to, maybe he was just happy the way things were, and maybe he's just fine the way it is, and maybe that is okay.
I think an important point there is, do you need external validation? So do you need other people to say to you that you're worthy and that you're
Yeah.
successful, or do your inner values bring about this experience of I'm doing well and
Yeah.
I have a good place in the world?
And it's also, again, touches social media to a big degree, because I feel like the whole upbringing of social media kind of triggers being more socially valued for what you choose to do. If you're gonna be a psychologist and you share it on social media, it's less interesting to other people than saying I want to be a YouTuber, or I want to start a podcast, or I want to do other certain things like that is less triggerable. It's less fantastic or whatever. I feel like.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
Although it's not true in reality, of course,
Mm-hmm.
because it makes more sense if you really contribute something to the other people's lives around you and to society more broadly.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think you will feel more content eventually.
Yeah.
And that's also why when people become older, they become more content with the place they have in the world, because they start perceiving this differently.
Yeah, and I think it takes time to realize how what you do contributes to society. I really feel like it sometimes takes time. As a young person, it's sometimes difficult to realize that, but it's one of those things where people who even like work in the Albert Heijn, there need to be people working in the Albert Heijn to be able to go to the Albert Heijn, or else they wouldn't exist and you wouldn't have food. So even those people are kind of essential. But when you're younger, you don't really realize that. You're just there because you need money, because you want to do something, and you're just doing that. And you don't realize how essential it is to actually society to a certain degree. And I feel like when you get older, you kind of realize, especially when you are in a job more and more, you start thinking about, hey, actually this is quite important, because you start noticing the people that come there, and maybe even the people that come there regularly. And you're like, oh wait, I have influence in their lives and I contribute to their lives in a certain way. But when you're younger, you're not working at the same place long enough to start realizing those things. I feel like when you get older, you realize those things more and more when the longer you work somewhere. Especially as somebody like, I never worked anywhere long enough to experience these things. Like I worked at the Laplace in the summer sometimes, and there were sometimes regular customers that came there. But if you work there for a month, you don't really connect with those people.
Well, the interesting point you're referring to now is how important it is to be part of an ongoing pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And you have duties because you're part of this company and you have a place there. And I think a lot of our meaning and happiness we experience come from taking on these responsibilities and being part of it. And even if it's not necessarily the most enjoyable situation you can be in, taking on these responsibilities and keeping doing this for a long period of time will give you a feeling of being connected to other people and to the world, and that will provide you with happiness and meaning. So, for example, rearing children takes a lot of energy, and it's not every second of it is probably the best moment in your life, but on a bigger scale, that you're part of these lives and that you're so essential to their well-being, etc., gives you a feeling of purpose.
Yeah.
And this is probably also true for many other jobs and responsibilities, like taking care of your parents. And
yeah. And any job where if you work long enough in a job, you start seeing those patterns and realizing them and seeing how your actions influence people, their lives, or probably for the better in most cases. I mean, or you might quit with a job when you get older if you realize it doesn't do that.
But it's so surprising that nowadays we really have to find ourselves in our job, right? Mm-hmm. So we should not only have a job we can talk about with other people, but be exceptionally good at it. And we try to becoming our true selves through the work we're doing.
How do you mean that?
Until not that long ago, people just had jobs, and that was part of what they were doing. But there were so many more things in their lives that supported their identity. But nowadays, people also try to use their job to self-actualize in a way.
Yeah.
So having a job is not good enough. You should just have a special job, and you should really being able to use and develop who you are through your work. And this is not something everybody of us can really achieve.
And then fame is kind of maybe a certain hallmark of that, of being able to show how special you are in your job.
It's a very individualistic approach to life, yes.
Well, it's way more like my mom, for instance, she can play 5 different music instruments, stuff like that, and being able to do that is a very big part of her identity. And then, I mean, she played 5, and now she's started learning the harp again, or something like that, like a new instrument. And then that's a really big. Every time you come home, and it's immediately like, oh, I learned a new thing on the harp, and then she showed that. And talking about her work is a lesser part of her identity, so for a big part. And I don't see that as much in my friends. I would say they're very career focused very often, not very focused on their hobbies.
And that's also something that happens when you're young, because you're trying to fight to find yourself a place in the world where you get resources, and you find yourself a nice mate, and you can reproduce. And you have a lot of traits which are on the forefront, which are associated with that. So you're much more narcissistic, much more willing to use other people to get what you want in life. And when you grow older, often this fades back into the background. So you become less self-focused, and these kind of things become less important to you. So you seldomly hear people after their 50s talking very much about the careers they have, or it might actually be there, but it became less important.
Yeah.
So there are so many other things which are important to them.